Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles, and on this episode we're doing It Came From The Network. The topic of this It Came From The Network, Clash of the Champions number 28. And on this is where we review the weird, wacky, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes terrible stuff you can find formerly on the WWE Network, now on Peacock, and it's WWE Network, I guess, if you're outside of the United States. With all that being said, we grade everything here on a 1 to 5 scale. Let's jump right in with the first match of the evening, or the first match of the show. The Nasty Boys versus Pretty Wonderful, which is Paul Roma and Paul Orndorff, the two Pauls. I thought this was a good opener. I enjoyed this. This is about as good as the Nasty Boys were going to be. This run in WCW, I like as their best part of their career. To me, Pretty Wonderful, underrated team. A lot of people hate on Paul Roma, and I don't think it's I don't think it's Paul's fault. For a lot of years, Paul was portrayed as basically an enhancement talent, either by himself or with Jim Powers as a young Stallions, so he kind of got that stink on him. However, he was a really good wrestler with a good look to him. So when he came to WCW, it felt like WCW was just pushing a guy that not very long before that had been basically a jobber in WWE. Anyway, I thought they were a good team though. I enjoyed them. And we're going to see something here, obviously with the Nasty Boys. A theme starts to get in. This is the very early stages of the Friends of Hogan coming into WCW era, which obviously the Nasty Boys are known friends of his. Nasties pick up the win here. I'm going to give it a 3. The other notable thing we see in the crowd, they keep talking about this overly rambunctious fan, which is obviously Barry Darsow, a.k.a. Smash, a.k.a. the Repo Man. This was when he was coming in for his Blacktop Bully gimmick, which he has a BB on the shirt he's wearing. They don't ever call him by the Blacktop Bully, but this is where basically we started seeing him. After that, we have Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart coming out for an interview. A man dressed in all black comes out and hits Hogan in the knee with a pipe. Bobby Heenan, who I believe, it doesn't say it on the network, but I want to say this was his first night on commentary for WCW. Bobby Heenan refers to the Nancy Kerrigan, Tanya Harding thing, which if you're too young, check out the movie I, Tonya. It covers that. Basically, Hogan's now got a knee injury, needs to be raced to the hospital to be checked on. So that's another thing that's an ongoing thread, which we'll talk about that at the end. But there is an ongoing thread of Hogan and his health all through this show. Next up, we get a match for the U.S. Championship. Stunning Steve Austin versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. I love this feud. I love Steamboat and Austin as a feud. I like Stunning Steve a lot. Parts of me like Stunning Steve better than Stone Cold Steve Austin. There's something about his heel character that I really enjoyed here. This match was awesome. And it's really surprising when I tell you here in a moment what exactly went on. Because this match, you could put this match on today and it would get a standing ovation, it would get 5 stars, whatever you say about it. Steamboat picks up the win here, winning the U.S. Championship. The reason why this stands out so much and why it's such an amazing feat, this is the match that Ricky Steamboat injured his back, which caused his retirement. For him to put out that performance with an injured back, and knowing that and watching it back now, I was trying to find where the injury happened and I couldn't. There were times that he winces or he holds his back in pain, but it's not any shot where, like a superplex or something that hits him in the back, where he normally wouldn't respond to it that way. and he masterfully covered up his back injury with what ended up being, in my opinion, a fantastic match. My favorite match of the night. I'm giving this a 5. Unfortunately, again, it's the end of Ricky's in-ring career. We've seen him for 2 more matches about a decade and a half later, but essentially this was the end of his career. Next up, we get Eric Bischoff with an update on Hulk Hogan, saying that he wants to make it back to the arena, we get here a nice stretch of basically filler, I would say, or what you would be used to seeing on not a special event, but more of a regular show. We get a video, again, another Hogan friend, for a not yet debuted Honky Tonk Man music video, which this was as close as you could possibly get to plagiarizing the WWF Honky Tonk Man song without outright stealing it. Some of the words were the same, some of the cadence was the same. And this was like the meme or the thing that you see on the internet every now and then when you ask for the Honky Tonk Man theme on Wish. This is what you get. Go back and watch it because it's terrible. And no disrespect to Honky, I think he's a great character. This was just a bad theme. And that's really what I could say about that. It's so bad it's funny, in my opinion. After that, we get another Hulk Hogan update, this time from Nick Bockwinkel, who says if Hulk Hogan can't defend the title will go to Ric Flair, and Hulk Hogan will get a shot against Ric Flair when his injury heals, which obviously lets us know Hulk Hogan's going to be back and he's going to wrestle. So therefore, that's what that sets up. Next up, we get a recap of one of the, and again, like I said, there's a lot of time between matches here. There was a lot of backstage and videos here. We get a video on one of the great promos of Dusty Rhodes' later in his career era, if that makes sense. This is the promo, and if you're a fan of wrestling, you're a fan of the Rhodes family, I know you've seen this promo. This is the one where he basically says that he wants to team up with Dustin, and he doesn't want to seal it with a handshake, he wants to seal it with a hug and a kiss, which is just fantastic. Dusty Rhodes is Dusty Rhodes. There's nothing more I can actually say about Dusty Rhodes that hasn't been said a million times over. He is absolutely one of the greats of all time. This leads us into our next match, which is just filled with stars. On one side, you have Dusty and Dustin Rhodes going up against the Tennessee Stud Stable, which is Terry Funk and Bunkhouse Bunk, with Tennessee Lee, Colonel Robert Parker, also with Meng as the bodyguard. This was a solid match. I really enjoyed this. This is actually my second favorite match of the evening. I really enjoyed this as well. You got two of the top 5 wrestlers of all time in Funk and Dusty Rhodes in there. Dustin, a top 20 wrestler. Bunkhouse Buck, really underrated, especially if you go back to his era as Jimmy Golden when he wrestled in Continental and in others territories. Very, very good wrestler. And at the time, watching Bunkhouse Buck, and this happens to me, it actually happens to me more than I like to admit, but there's sometimes when a wrestler changes character and I don't realize who he used to be, so I didn't realize that Bunkhouse Buck and Jimmy Golden were the same guy till years later, which, credit to him, because he acted totally differently. We do see in the match, Arn Anderson comes out and gets involved, basically causing a disqualification for the Rhodes family to pick up a win here. I thought this was really good, really fun, a great match on a show like Clash of Champions. I'm giving this one a 5 again. Next up, we get yet another interview with Bischoff another update on Hulk Hogan, which he says Hulk Hogan's checked himself out of the hospital. He's on the way to the arena. Then we get an interview with Ric Flair and Sensational Sherry. Ric Flair basically says, Hogan, if you show up, just hand me the belt. Full-on Ric Flair and his Ric Flair glory. I mean, he's firing on all cylinders here. And it's just amazing the level of talent that's on this card. And this was just another great Flair interview, which everybody, I mean, Flair always has great interviews. It's one of the things he's known for, as well as being one of the best in-ring wrestlers of all time. After that, we get a match with Lord Steven Regal, and I know I'm probably going to call him William a million times here, so I'm sorry if I do. Going up against Antonio Inoki. This was a very interesting and very violent match. If what they're doing now with the Blackpool Combat Club is kind of what they were doing here. This was more of a actual mat wrestling, chain wrestling clinic. And I've heard Regal say that the reason he was picked for this was Inoki wanted someone that could do the old British style, and Regal was one of the last guys that was able to do that. This match was really solid. Another thing, and I seen this just recently actually, and it's the reason why I went back and watched this. Regal said in an interview just recently that the sleeper, the choke at the end, was 100% legit. He didn't want to tap out, so he let Inoki actually choke him out. He actually went unconscious there. Take that with a grain of salt. It is a wrestler telling a wrestling story. But I tend to believe William Regal on that. I believe him when he says that he thought it would be better for the match and he thought it would be better for his own career to have Inoki choke him out as opposed to tapping out. Again, like I said, we got possibly the biggest star in the history of Japanese wrestling. If not, he's in the top 3 with Ricky Dozan and Giant Baba. So, I mean, again, we're just seeing a star-studded card from the top to the bottom. And I'm not talking about guys that were young in their career, other than, obviously, Dustin Rhodes is very young in his career here. Steve Austin's young in his career here. William Regal. I mean, but still, just the amount of talent on this card is astounding. I'm giving this match a 4, by the way, if I haven't mentioned that already. I thought it was really solid. Next up, we get the main event of the evening, Ric Flair versus Hulk Hogan for the WCW Championship. They had Michael Buffer come out here, which always makes it feel important. Flair had Sherry on his side. Hogan had Jimmy Hart. This was probably one of my favorite Ric Flair-Hulk Hogan matches. They worked the knee injury really well, and most of Hogan's offense, and go back and watch Hogan as a face, most of Hogan's offense was heel tactics, were eye rakes, scratches, chokes with his shirt. I mean, Hogan was doing a lot of heel stuff, and even if you go back to his WWE time, he was doing a lot of the heel stuff. Fantastic way they worked this match. Sherry gets involved at some point, and we end up with there being Hogan getting out on the outside of the ring. And what was really weird is it seems like they started counting on 5 or 6, because this had to be one of the quickest countouts in the history of wrestling, and there was a lot of time left because there was an aftermath after this. Hogan gets counted out, Ric Flair wins. He doesn't win the title. Someone didn't clue in Michael Buffer that you can't win a title on a countout, so he announces Ric Flair's champion, and then he announces that Ric Flair didn't win the championship because of a disqualification, not a countout. So, obviously, Michael Buffer's not up on his wrestling terminology at this point, at the very least. After the match, we see or during the match, actually, we see the Man in Black come out. After the match, the Man in Black comes out again, which then he attacks Hogan, which Flair continues to to put the figure 4. Flair and Sherry are working him over, which brings out Brutus Beefcake, brother Brutai at the time, and brings out Sting, who I forgot to mention. They noted was in Chicago and was flying here in case he needed to take Hogan's place. This was really interesting, especially knowing that the Masked Man ends up being Brutus Beefcake. I believe it was Arn Anderson actually under the mask here, but the reveal later on is that it's Beefcake, and that's how the Three Faces of Fear begins. I'm giving this match a 4. It's my favorite of the Hogan and Flair matches, or it's right up there. I haven't watched a lot of them in a while, but this was rather enjoyable. Overall, I mean, like I said, a star-studded card. We had the Nasty Boys, who were at one point a great team. Paul Orndorff, a great wrestler. Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. Steve Austin. Video with the Honky Tonk Man, one of the greatest Intercontinental Champions of all time. Nick Bockwinkel, one of the greatest AWA Champions of all time. Dusty Rhodes, one of the greatest of all time. Terry Funk, one of the greatest of all time. Dustin Rhodes, another one of the greatest of all times. Arn Anderson, Ming, absolute legends. Ric Flair, Antonio Inoki, Hulk Hogan. This match, this card was stacked with nothing but legends. I mean, it was a very enjoyable card, a very fun watch. Overall, I'm going to give the whole show a 5. I liked the coherent storyline going through the show, even though it was a Hogan ego thing. It made the show feel more important. It made the main event feel more important that they kept giving us updates on what was going to happen. I like what they did here. Again, highlighting all these legends. To me, it was a fantastic show. I rather enjoyed it. With that being said, please smash that like button, subscribe if you haven't, share the video, and if you made it this far, put in the comments legends for all the legends that are on this show. With all that being said, my name is George Coles, and this has been my review of Clash of the Champions number 28.